I'm Dean Sponheim, part owner of Sponheim Sales Services here in north central Iowa, God's country, where it's nice, flat, and black. And this is my son Josh, and I'll let him introduce you. Here's yourself.
Josh Sponheim, of course, grew up here, went to Iowa State, graduated in 04, went around the state before moving back here in 14, which is basically the year we started the first trial run of the cover crop business.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Just to mention that I'm the 4th generation farmer on this farm, so he's the 5th generation. So it's been in the family farm for a long time. Actually, it was...
we just figured it up. It was 137 years it's been in our family.
Yep. How we got started it was very interesting because in the late 90s, even early 90s, we had neighbors that started no-tilling soybeans. And then we started strip-tilling in the late 90s. And that was sort of a unique thing here that was not being done. We were full with tillage for many years. I ran a mobile plow most of my career until the last, 30 years, probably now, 25, 30 years. So that's what's done mostly here. We had a group of neighbors, probably 5 or 6 of us, that had been doing no-till and now got into strip-till around the 2000 period. And we were getting that all figured out, trying to work that out so it would work for us. And then in 2012, we had an invitation to go to NRCS Field Day, and they were going to talk about cover crops. And so I kind of drug my feet, but these guys said that we should all go. So we did, and they started talking about cover crops and how they were going to fly it into our standing crops before we harvested the corn and soybeans, and I thought that was the stupidest idea I'd ever heard. But make a long story short, I couldn't be left behind. I didn't want my neighbors to get ahead of me. Okay, that's sort of bad, but then they also said that these cover crops could sequester extra nutrients that I have in my soil that my crop hadn't taken up. And that little point really probably hooked me because we don't have much slope. We don't have much more than, at the time, we didn't have anything over 2% slope, so we didn't have a lot of erosion problems, and that's where the cover crop really started with. But I went along, okay? So in 2012, we started flying it on as a group, and we probably had 500 or 600 acres. But each individual producer would bring their own seed, so that we each would show up with a trailer load of 50-pound bags. And it got to be quite a bit by the 2nd and 3rd year. And actually after the 2nd year, the guys said, well, you know, Dean, you're the Pioneer sales rep. Why don't you start getting the seed for us? And of course I couldn't say no, and I said, sure, I will do that, not knowing what it would turn into. That fall, or that winter, we had a neighbor, a cattle producer, that had chopped silage and put cereal rye in, and he came up to us and he said, you know, I want to take this to harvest. I want to combine it. I want the straw. I want a place to haul manure. Can you take the seed? We understand you're going to get the seed for the cover crop. And we said yes, and that's where that started. So now from the 40 acres of seed that we grew that year to we're growing about 1,500 acres now of rye and oats together. We did about 500 or 600 acres of aerial application, and now we're up to 25,000 that we do through the business, and we have probably another 5,000 or 6,000 we do with drills. So it's gone along a long ways from a meager start where I was kind of pushed into it, or voted into it. How's that?
You just don't say no.
That's true. This is one time where
it did work out.
Yes.
Yes. It did. Well, I hate to say it, but that first cereal rye we bought, probably 2,000 bushels or so we bought, we didn't even clean it. We just flew it on. Granted, it was going on 5 producers, and they were okay with it. Weren't worried about weeds or anything like that, where it was coming from. So yeah, that first year just got flown on, and we just took it right up to the airport. It was interesting. We had to haul a conveyor and a generator up because the conveyor was an electric conveyor. So just some of those early learnings about moving stuff around was unique. Then after that 2nd year, we had another cattle producer, I believe, grew some rye. And then we had quite the setup outside, a rotary cleaner going into an air cleaner and then back into wagons. It was quite, and if there was rain on the forecast, we had to tear everything down, put it in shed. Then the rain went through, get it all back out, set it back up. Then it was probably 3 years later when we finally decided to put we had bought a small cleaner from a weld shop in Wisconsin, put it in an old cattle shed, and ran maybe 100 bushels an hour through it.
Maybe, probably not. Probably more like 50.
Yeah, I suppose by then we were probably up to 100 acres of rye that we were buying from producers. We were at that time then also sourcing from Elberly Seed House because we weren't producing enough around here. And it just kind of scaled up from there. We added another cleaner to that one in that old cattle shed. And then Rachel and I finally convinced Dad that this is a viable business. Let's build an actual shed. And we did, and upgraded cleaners. Moved one of those that we had been using, but added another one. So now we're cleaning about 400 bushels an hour as of last year. So,
no, a lot of different changes. So, up until when did we build that building?
2019.
I still, in the back of my mind, didn't know if this thing would work. I was very hesitant. We were going to invest a lot of money into something that was only short-lived. So we did things really, really
bare bones.
Intense, bare bones, yeah. And it's turned out very well. Probably the first 5 or 6 years, probably at least 5 years, we were doubling in size every year. And that's a pretty good indication that the business is doing pretty well. And then as we gotten bigger and larger, we're still maintaining between a 20 and a 30% increase every year. So when most businesses look at me, if you can increase 8 to 10% a year is really good. And maybe we'll get to that eventually, but right now it's still going quite well.
I think part of that, going to what you'd asked earlier about with the accelerator program, we got started in that, and the biggest thing I took out of that is forced us to actually sit down and put the numbers together and really look at it and come up with more of a long-term plan. And I think that helped kind of push him over the edge. Rachel and I were already there, but he needed a little extra shove to start the investment process and really make this a true business.
That was good for me because I was just from a farming background all my life, and this business is different than farming business. It really is.